fellow babies, welcome back to the Pachter Factor on SIFTD.net. Happy to have you if you're a subscriber, and if you're not, it's $50 a year. You get access to a ton of custom content, and if you're not a subscriber and you're watching on YouTube, that's cool too. We just want to make sure we're reaching all my fellow babies. I actually want to start out by acknowledging that I made a horribly insensitive and inappropriate comment in an earlier episode. I made just the horribly terrible, mean mistake of attacking a person rather than their ideas. I always had respect for Mr. Iwata. He was a creative genius. He did a great job with Nintendo. I did question his ideas, his judgment on some of his business practices, and I made an off-the-cuff remark saying he was not so great. That's not appropriate. I should have challenged his decision a few years ago to adopt a paid download business model. I don't think that's a smart decision. That doesn't make the man any less of a great gentleman. So my apologies to the late Mr. Iwata and his memory and his family and his fans. It was just inappropriate. I'm sorry that I did it. I hope you'll accept my apology. I know I'm going to get a lot of feedback here where this apparently doesn't sound very sincere. I mean it sincerely. Take it as you will, but I do not mean at all to denigrate the man. I should have just limited it to challenging it wasn't a particularly good idea to go paid download. We'll see if I'm right or if he was right when Super Mario Run comes out. Anyway, thanks for joining us. Let's move on to this week's first question. We have a question from SIFTD, from Doby Wan. Will third-party support improve for the Nintendo Switch since it doesn't use motion controls? Will the use of game cartridges, SD cards, limit its potential? Let me answer that backwards. I don't think SD cards matter either way. I have flash memory in a stick that's 128 gigs. So SD cards don't limit the ability to put a gigantic game onto a file and put it on an SD card. I'm sure that they use SD cards because they expect the files to be quite large, and I think that they don't want to be, limited to having to download a game to the device, because the device probably won't have 512 gigs of flash memory in it. That's very expensive. You can probably get games down to a pretty small file, small as in 8, 9, 10 gigs, and still be a very high quality game. A lot of PS4 games and Xbox One games are 35 gigs and bigger. So again, I'm not sure that they're going to put these on 35 gig SD cards. We'll find out. And I think that could be a limiting factor in the quality of the games. But I don't think that that's going to keep people from porting over most games. Most games don't have to be that big. There's a lot of features, and game developers are getting smarter about compressing the size of the file. So we'll see. I think more important, though, is, it says, will third-party support improve since Nintendo Switch doesn't use motion controls? It's more of a conventional console. And by conventional, I mean you're using a controller either with the tablet device or if you play it in the docking station on the TV. So the control scheme is very similar, nearly identical to what's used by PS4 and Xbox One. I don't think that is a reason to support it, but it certainly removes an impediment to some that wouldn't support it if it used motion control. So good question. The 16 gig limit is because 16 gigs of flash costs about $2, maybe one. And 64, unfortunately, put it on a single card is pretty expensive. Now, I just bought a 128 gig flash stick, memory stick, just because I like having everything, for my phone, everything in a single place just to have it. And I paid $19.95 retail on Amazon. So the truth is, you can probably get 64 gigs for $5 or $6. That's much, much more expensive than a DVD. Blu-ray DVD will hold 50 gigs, and it probably costs 75 cents. So I think that, of course, that requires a Blu-ray drive. You're not going to put a Blu-ray drive inside the Switch. So they had to come up with something that was high capacity storage. They're probably recommending 16 because of manufacturing costs. And my bias is, if somebody came up with a game that was 30 and they could put it on a 32 gig flash card, that probably only costs $4 or $5. They'll probably just charge a royalty, to make that SD card that's $2 or $3 higher. So my bias is that Nintendo is just trying to come up with a price where, hey, our royalty for games on this is 10 or 12 bucks, but if you go above 16, the royalty rises by 2, and it's probably something like that. The truth is, I think with 32 gigs, you can pretty much get just about every game from PS4 and Xbox One onto a file that small. And I mean, again, there are games that are bigger, but most are not. Next question from SIFTD, from Wilson. Nintendo has announced that it will not reveal any more details about Switch until January. Is the withholding of such important information until just 2 months before launch detrimental to its success? The truth is, I think that the game developers know. So anybody who's going to support this thing in the first year has to know the specs, or they couldn't possibly support it. The number of games that were shown on the Switch reveal suggests that a ton of publishers have stuff in development. Some of them were older games, some aren't, so it's not clear. But the older games were current gen games, so it looks like some stuff can actually work on it. And the publishers who are supporting it know. So I don't think it's detrimental to withhold details about the specs. I do think it might be detrimental to hold details about the price unless the surprise is a positive one. So if the price comes in, and it won't happen, but if the price came in at $99, waiting until the last second to tell us that doesn't hurt sales at all. It gets us all excited. If the price comes in at the last second at $9.99, then it didn't matter if they told us a year ahead of time, we weren't buying it. So, I think that finding out that it's something you can afford, maybe makes you save up. But that's it. I don't think we need to know specs. They can drum up a lot of support. And I also think announcing all this stuff in January kind of positions them to dominate the news cycle. Look what the Rockstar guys did with the Red Dead trailer, kind of coming the week after Battlefield launched and the week before Titanfall. They dominated the news cycle. That's all anybody wanted to talk about was Red Dead. So Nintendo's going to be there in January. No other news. It's going to be the only thing. I think that's why they're doing it, and I think that's actually quite smart. Our next question from SIFTD, from Substance 104. What do you think the price of Switch will be? What price will make it fly off store shelves? I think that Nintendo needs to make a console that is competitive with PS4, which is currently $249. And it can be slightly underpowered at $249, and people will buy it because it's a Nintendo, console. It probably can't justify a price above $299, which is the current price for the Xbox One S, I think, unless it's powered more than them, and that doesn't look possible to me using a Tegra chipset. So, I think that the price kind of has to be between $199 and $299. Below $200 is a magic price point. I don't expect that, but below $200, it will fly off the shelves. $249, I think, is the right price. $299, I think, is the outside high price. Above $299, I think it's in trouble. So if I had to make a bet, $249. And I think that's reasonable because PS4 is there. PS4 Pro is $399. Xbox One S will probably be $249 by March, once Sony kicks their butts again this holiday. So I think that's just the right price. And I think it's actually a good supplement for a PS4 owner and Xbox One S or Xbox One owner to buy a Nintendo Switch anyway. The other thing is, a lot of people will look at it as a handheld, even though it's far more sophisticated than a handheld. And so I kind of think they can't get too far away from the Nintendo DS kind of launch price. I mean, the $179-ish, and $149, even though this is much, much more capable. So I don't think you can charge twice the price of a Nintendo DS original. Nintendo DS is now under $100, shocking. So they'll probably keep making those as well, the 3DS. And I think that's a good product lineup. The $99 3DS $249 Switch. So that's my call, $249. Okay, we have a question this week from Twitter, from @Wabz. Would Nintendo be smart to sell a new handheld separate from Switch? Should it focus on smartphones instead? Well, they just dropped the price of the 3DS to $100. I think you might see one more handheld, but I really don't expect that. I think the Switch is the next handheld, and I think that as Switch comes down in price, I think they'll just continue. As the component cost gets lower and lower, they'll continue to lower the price, and it will become the de facto handheld. They are focusing on smartphones. I just think that their decision several years ago to focus on paid download is the wrong one. They've done free-to-play, and that's done fair. Miitomo didn't do particularly well on monetization. We'll see how Fire Emblem and Animal Crossing do. Those are niche-y games. I mean, Animal Crossing is pretty popular, could do very well, but I think Super Mario Run is going to be surprisingly poor. The game will be great. I think the dollars will be surprisingly poor because people just don't want to pay first. They just do not want to do that. They like getting hooked and then buying stuff in the game. So again, I think that the company continues to view itself as a hardware manufacturer that's supported by great proprietary software. I think it's a tough bridge for them to cross to say we are a mobile developer first. That's just not how they think. So yes, I think that you will have a handheld separate from Switch, which is the 3DS. I don't know that you'll get a new one because the Switch may morph into their new handheld, but I think they're committed to that as their platform for a long time. That's it for Pachter Factor. Thanks for joining us again, fellow babies. If you're on YouTube, we appreciate your viewership. If you can afford to, appreciate it if you would join SIFTD.net so we can continue to produce high quality content. Thanks for joining us. See you next week.